Are we gaining this much status? Huh?
Does that have to be unmuted?
Is that, can you get that microphone? Is that
Test, test. Whoop. Yeah, you need to. Testing, 1, 2, 2,
Is that on?
2. No.
Turn that on. Talking.
Just follow the
Oh,
camera.
it's a camera.
The camera mic?
Yeah, it's like so noisy.
I was like,
Oh,
Testing 1 2 2 2 2 2. Mic check. Testing 1 2. What's up? YouTube. I'm talking YouTube slash my underscore live events question mark action underscore edit I have no idea. Live. Okay, I forgot. I got edit. Underscore live. Get my radio. It's just wait. Give me a sec. I forgot what my radio is. Give me a sec. Live. Underscore event. Yeah. Matt said he was doing it. I think my radio's on the podium. Event. Underscore stream. You can't just. Oh, goddamn. Equals. Oh. 1. And sign. Event. Underscore. ID. Equals. L. 8. V. D. Y. O. D. J. UX. Q. Just take his radio. Server cannot found. Do I need to type the Does I need to type in the HTTPS?
I think so, but I guess.
HTTP.
testing. Testing. 1 2 3. Testing.
Yeah, it doesn't know how it works.
Testing. 1 2 3. Testing. Testing.
I think that is mine. Because he has his on here. Yeah. Yeah, just take that one. Hey, look, there it is. Live events, do it live. Is that it? Is that it? Is this the website?
No, it should be live.
Testing. 1.
Oh, my live events, slash action, edit live. Percent 20 underscore stream equals 1. What happened? Why can't you just copy and paste it? Just take a picture of it?
Yeah.
Testing. 1 2 3. Check. 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 check, check. Testing, testing. Test, test, 1, 2, 3, check, check. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Testing, 1, 2, 3. Hello? Check, check, 1, 2, 3. Checking, 1, 2, 3.
Please. It's 1.2. Actually, you know what? I need to put my battery.
Microphone check. 1, 2, 3. Testing. Testing. Testing 1, 2, 3. This is a microphone check. Microphone test. Testing.
I am honored to serve as the UTSA Student Body President for the Student Government here for the Student Government Association at UTSA. It is. Let me adjust this so I can see. All right. It is my pleasure to welcome you this evening to the Riviera Report's conversation with the Councilman with Manny Politis. A community discussion regarding the new council, the future of San Antonio, and District 8, our home at UTSA. Now, I would like to introduce you, I want to welcome up our president, Dr. Taylor Amy, for quick remarks. You want to come on up?
Marcus, thank you. In these times, the opportunity for our elected officials to meet with the public is a very cherished thing, and it's important. And it's important if you're a taxpayer. It's important if you're a Cub Scout, understanding what it means to have a role in civic engagement and how important that is. And the Rivard Report is a fabulous organization that takes the time to very carefully portray issues for us to digest and contemplate, and has a very important voice in our city as a source of news that is deeper and more profound and more connected to things we need to be thinking about. I'm a big fan of the Rivard Report and of Bob's efforts, and he hosts these conversations with our city councilors, and the opportunity to have Manny Politis here as our District 8 councilor representing UTSA to have this important conversation with Bob and the Rivard Report is just exactly how democracy should be working in this country. So I'm delighted that UTSA is the host for this evening. I know Bob works carefully with the community to host these conversations all around the city. We're very blessed to have this here, and we're looking forward to tonight's conversations, and thank you both for the things that you do for this community.
Thank you, Taylor.
Thanks.
So I just want to go a little bit more in depth about Robert Rivillard. So he is the founder he is the founder and director of the Rivillard Report, a nonprofit local news and information site that informs and connects engaged citizens in San Antonio. The Rivillard Report is in its 6th year of publication and now has 15 full-time employees and a growing number of freelance contributors. It also serves as a publishing platform for people in the community to share their stories and commentaries. Rivillard is a longtime award-winning journalist who served as editor of the San Antonio Express News from 1997 to 2011, and previously worked for Newsweek's magazine as its Central America correspondent, covering the region's civil wars in the 1980s and from 1985 to 89. Its global chief of correspondence, So he is the author of Trail of Feathers, Searching for Phillips True, a nonfiction book that chronicles the disappearance and murder of Express News Philip True in Mexico's Sierra Madre, and the long fight to win the conviction of True's killer. Rivillard is married to Monica Malik. Did I mess that name up?
I'll correct that a little later. She's here.
A writer, naturalist, and communication consultant. They have 2 sons, Nicholas, a designer and inner-city developer, and Alexander, a history, government, and music teacher at Central Catholic High School. So please welcome Mr. Rivillard.
Thank you, Marcus. Thank you. I'm going to be like President Trump and clap for myself very briefly. Thank you, Marcus, very much, and congratulations on your term as student president. And thank you very much, President Amy, and welcome again to San Antonio. We're delighted to have you here. I'd like to tell anybody in the audience that doesn't know, and it was left out of my brief bio there, that I'm one of you. I'm a UTSA graduate and a proud alum. So it's nice to be back on campus. I get lost here every time I come because there's a new building every time I'm out here, which is great. And my wife, Monica Mackley, is with me out here today, too. So I'm going to start with a confession, which is I have known this guy for a long time, and vice versa, and have watched his development as a true community leader, not just over the years, but it might even be decades now. In fact, I've known Manny not first because I knew Manny, but because of his mom, Marta. And his mom is a true pioneer in the area of protecting abused women in San Antonio. The founder and director of the Bexar County Women's Battered Women's Shelter with the Children's Shelter, going back at least 20 years, Manny, I think, right? 40, that's just amazing. So long before most of us became sensitized to those issues in the community, Manny's mother was a pioneer in that area. And how many people were in San Antonio in 2003? Put this in perspective. So look around the room. The majority of the hands are down. That is a reflection of how fast our city's growing and changing, that most of you weren't here 15 years ago. 2003, it so happens, was the year that Toyota Manufacturing, Japanese officials from Toyota Manufacturing came to San Antonio and announced that they were going to build the first modern manufacturing assembly plant here in San Antonio. And you know who their first employee they hired was? Manny Police. Now, this guy's never built a truck, okay? I'm not going to give him credit for building the first Tundra. He was really hired to integrate this company from Japan, Toyota and Toyota America, into San Antonio and South Texas. And that's probably when we first really got to know each other, Manny. And that was also a time this city was going through some incredibly difficult things because Kelly Air Force Base, which had helped define the city, create the Hispanic middle class in this city with federal wage jobs, where 20, 30,000 people, civilians, used to go to work every day, was finally closing once and for all. We had fought a long losing battle, and now we were seeing that Brooks Air Force Base was going to close right behind it. That became Brooks City Base, which it is today, and it's a thriving multi-purpose community. And Manny was the chairman of that authority that founded Brooks City Base. So long before he came to city council, I was able to watch him in a number of key roles, and we became friends and associates over that time. So Manny, it's great to be with you. And
pleasure's mine.
I can't call you Councilman Police.
Don't do it.
And I know you can't call me Rivard. So we're going to be on a first name basis up here and have a great conversation.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for everybody who's here. And Dr. Amy, thank you for opening up your home to me and to Bob so that we can have conversations like these.
We're in District 8.
Yeah, and you can fit all of District 8 on your campus, can't you? Yeah.
So you've been deeply involved in the community for years and years, but this is your first elected office. And
it is.
I want to hear what it's like on the other side now that you're sitting in the hot seat, as it were, compared to when you decided to go ahead and throw your hat in the ring and run for office. How's the first year been?
Very similar to my first year at Toyota. I was minding my own business, and I got a phone call in 2003, and how would you like to be Toyota's first employee in all of Texas? And I said, sure. And then 6 weeks later, I started working, and throughout 2003 to 2008, I swore that every day I showed up to work was going to be the day they found out I had no idea what I'm talking about. I feel like that every single day going to work at City Hall. We all are experts in traffic. We're all experts in water and taxation and education, and really we're not, right? And I get to work with the real experts in how people move around a city, or the real experts in how to plan the city of tomorrow and be ready for the next 1.5 million people. I get to work with experts in metro health, right? In crime prevention, in justice administration, in education, and it is like drinking from a fire hydrant. And studying and taking the bar was a lot easier. But I'm happy to be here. I'm learning a lot, and I'll tell you, frankly, you asked the question the right way, which is, how is it? A lot of people have been making the mistake of asking, are you enjoying it? And I can tell you that that's the wrong question to ask new public officials, because the work that we do is not enjoyable. I got a call this weekend from the chief of police about a murder. And we've had 2 police officers assassinated. We've had drive-by shootings. We had Hurricane Harvey. We've had, to go through rate increases for saws, and there's always some fire to put out, and they're really meaningful, very serious fires. There's no enjoying that. It's a lot of hard work, and I've got a smart staff. My chief of staff, Pat, is here, and Aaron Nichols is here too from my director of communications. We are working all day long, and the fun stuff that you think that we're doing, ribbon cuttings and getting to hang out with Bob and do, speeches like this in front of people, these are few and far between moments. And all that time is filled up with people's stories, and many of those stories are very painful and very serious. And so I've had to adjust my expectations. If I've had to do anything, it's adjust my expectations about what I thought public office would be. It looks fun from the outside, but they don't call it work for nothing, and they don't call it public service for nothing.
Well, and you're responsible for conservatively 140,000 constituents. That actually is what it was at the last sentence. It's far more than that by now, and by the time we get to 2020, we'll see how much this city has grown. But that is a lot of people for a one-person operation with a relatively small staff at City Council. They don't give you a lot of money to build a big staff.
No, they don't. I'm blessed, though, that the city does rely a lot on the good judgment and the volunteer hours of appointees to boards and commissions, right? So I have a very brilliant appointee to the Brooks City-based board. His name's Steve Goldberg, former chief actuary for USAA. He's running a billion-dollar organization that, quite frankly, I don't have time to do it, and I know that he's doing a great job. One of my opponents in my race, for this seat, Tony Valdivia, who's in the room, has become a friend of mine, and I'm really thankful to Tony that you decided to serve in one of the commissions and boards that we put together. Monique Diaz is here as well, and she serves on the...
Hello, Monique. She's in her own race right now, isn't she?
Yeah, she's running for judge, but you're going to see her on the ballot this November. But, Monique decided to throw her hat in the ring, even while she's running, to serve on the committee for the status of women, a really important committee and a lot of heavy lifting done there. And so I don't have a big staff, but we've got a long list of appointees who are doing yeoman's work and doing some heavy lifting in those silos. And we wouldn't be able to do what we do without them.
Well, at one of these earlier conversations, somebody stood up and challenged how much we're paying council people, which I kind of retorted in defense of the council person is less than a first-year public school teacher makes, $46,000 or whatever it is. And the fact is, the average council person, I would bet, between time in the district office and time downtown is putting in a 70-hour week. And I know all your staff are doing the same thing, and I'm sorry for you guys, but it's his fault, not mine.
And to be fair, my staff is paid fairly for the work that they do. I wish I could give you guys, Christmas bonuses and all that, but, you're public servants. And
that's a sensitive subject.
It is, and I'll be happy to talk about it. But, as far as pay for city council, the city of San Antonio, its citizens, by way of voter referendum, decided to pay its city council $40,000 a year, right? For some city council members, that is a very meaningful paycheck, and it is the sole source of funds with which they feed their family and they pay their bills, right? I'm blessed that I have a small law firm. I have a law partner and some staff. That $40,000 is very much appreciated, right? But it's not why I do this, right? And thankfully, the decisions that I make on a daily basis that impact my district don't determine whether or not I pay my mortgage, right? And I think about that less. Now, in my earning bracket, and this is not bragging, but in my earning bracket, I promise you I'm sending almost all the money that I make from the city to the federal government anyway. And so it really just passes from one hand to the other. And, whether there was pay involved or not, I'd still be on this stage with you.
Well, let me ask you about pay for the city manager while we're on the subject of pay, because that's been in the news. And I myself recently wrote that although I favor paying top dollar to top officials that are in these most important jobs, running our city or our county or our energy utility or our water utility, I don't like the idea of paying them performance bonuses, and particularly when they run organizations that, unlike the private sector where other managers aren't eligible for bonuses. But Cheryl Scully was recently paid a $75,000 bonus, as she was last year. And I wonder what inside the room the dynamic was on that conversation, because in total, in my opinion, she's not paid a total sum of money that's out of sorts. But the notion that there's a performance bonus, I think, sticks in the throat of a lot of constituents and taxpayers who don't understand, why can't we just pay base salaries where we as voters know ahead of time what we're paying, and not have this constant debate over how much extra to give people?
So I'll start by prefacing that you're not the only one who doesn't like it, right? I have yet to meet a San Antonian out there who thinks that paying large bonuses to city officials is good, or that it leaves a good taste in your mouth. Nobody likes it, right? I can guarantee you that there's nobody in that room where we sit and decide things like this who enjoys making a decision like that. That is not a reflection on how we feel about the work that Cheryl Scully does. I think that she does amazing work, and she's worth every penny we pay her. That said, that is the structure as it exists in her current employment contract, right? Where we pay her a base, and then based on performance, we have room that's already been budgeted to be able to reward, performance. I agree with you. I wish that when the time comes to renegotiate that contract, we have a real difficult conversation with everybody involved about what the flavor it is that we all have in our mouth over the past umpteen years of having to pay large bonuses like this. That resentment that creates in people, and the optics of it, it's uncomfortable for an elected official. And I'm open to having that conversation. Let's remember that unlike all the other employees at the city, however, she's the only contract employee we've got that negotiates her salary and her bonus structure. The same goes for the CEO of SAWS, CPS, the CEO of VIA, the port. And so for those C-suite and pinnacle leaders at these organizations, that is the way it's done, not just in San Antonio, but in every major city of the United States. And so I don't like it, but the world we all live in is that this is the traditional structure. I'm happy to sit down with you, right? Because you've actually raised this topic, and we're talking about the column that you wrote at City Hall about whether it's time to revisit this, and I'm happy to.
Well, there's very high expectations for your council and your mayor, and of course, you wouldn't have run for District 8 if your predecessor, Ron Nierenberg, hadn't stepped up to challenge the then incumbent Ivy Taylor, and in fact defeat her in a runoff. A lot of us who have watched council over 20, 30 years see this as probably the best educated, best prepared mayor and council that we've seen in contemporary times. And so the expectations are high and the challenges are many. We're going to grow by 1 million people. We have never figured out any kind of alternative mass transit except a bus system that is for the working class. And every student here who's ever had to take the bus will tell you, how much misery that's added to their student career. Another subject is that until recently, we were in a seemingly indefinite war with the police union, and that is finally resolved. I've written very strongly on that subject too. I'm a big supporter of police and firefighters, but I felt like we were spending too much on particularly their health care. We've never gotten the firefighters union to the table. Will you be, you're a labor lawyer, among other things, so you know about negotiating and collective bargaining, and I certainly believe they deserve a fair shake, but we are still in the courts fighting over the so-called Evergreen Clause. That's on its way to the Texas Supreme Court.
So is everybody here familiar with the debate and the dispute between the fire union and the city? I'm seeing some hands that are saying no. So just very generally, I'll tell you.
Is his microphone on?
No? All right.
Because I'm hearing myself much better than I'm hearing him.
Okay. Very generally, I'll tell you that the fire union and the city are currently in litigation. And it's all about whether or not there's the clause in their contract called an Evergreen Clause is constitutional. The Evergreen Clause basically says if you can't negotiate a new contract, the current contract stays in effect and it just sort of automatically renews. The city says that's not constitutional. The fire union says, wait a second, it's your contract. You signed it. If it wasn't constitutional, why'd you guys put your name on the thing? And so that's currently made its way up to the Supreme Court. The city manager and the city attorney are confident that they're going to win at the Texas Supreme Court. The fire union is not happy that this isn't even in litigation. I'm a labor and employment lawyer, which means that I've had lots of experience dealing with unions and union disputes, and union organizing, union busting is also a topic that comes up often with my clients. And after spending 20 years doing that, I had this beautiful opportunity to spend a weekend at the LBJ Library. This is about a week after the election. And I get a call from one of your former colleagues at the Express News, and they said, well, listen, since you're a new councilman, I want to get your feel for, this intractable dispute between the fire union and the city, and it doesn't look like it'll ever get solved. And you say that you're this guy who knows something about unions. Do you agree that it'll never get resolved? And it's almost impossible. It looks like an impasse. And I observed that I'm spending this weekend in the LBJ library with none other than Bill Moyers. And he and I got to spend some time talking about LBJ's life and what he accomplished. LBJ passed the Civil Rights Act of 1964 by convincing senators from the South to vote for civil rights for Americans, when everybody told him it was impossible. And so I reminded your former colleague that if LBJ can break through and bring about the Civil Rights Act of 1964, I have a feeling that we're going to be able to solve the fire union contract of 2018. And so I really do think that sometimes we are too focused on this universe of City Hall and the palace intrigue, and that we could all use a dose of perspective, right? This is not the biggest problem we'll ever face. It's a big problem, right? For the people impacted, it may be the biggest problem in their universe. But when adults come to the table to negotiate in good faith, you're going to see a good deal done. And a good deal in labor is when both parties walk away a little unhappy. And that means, and Monique, you're in the back, you're a lawyer. I mean, you know that that's the same rule we apply to any negotiation and litigation. When one party sacrifices a little and the other party sacrifices a little, and they both walk away feeling like they left something on the table, you have reached a good deal. Now, here's the problem. The problem is that the fire union feels like they've got a gun up against their head. And you know what? They're right. And I don't think that a fire union should be asked to negotiate while there's litigation pending, because that's not good faith, right? And so I would like to see us, withdraw from that litigation. My fear is that that boat has already left the port, and we might see the Supreme Court, rule before we're all able to gather around the table. But I'm willing to bring those parties together and have that conversation.
It seems like the same package that was given to the police union should be offered to the fire union. And in that instance, I believe the city and fire union each moved a little bit, and there's an 8-year evergreen clause instead of a 10-year. And so that wouldn't get the city to where it wants to go, but it gets it some of the way. And you could avoid what otherwise is going to become a very angry, very expensive, very public and bitter battle again between city staff, city manager, and the union. And from experience, I can tell you, you guys won't get anything else done on council once that war starts, because it's so distracting and it tears so much at the fabric of the organization.
Yeah, look, it's not healthy. It's not healthy to have an adversarial relationship with your first responders, right? And I have a friend here, Mary Lou. You're married to a firefighter. This impacts your family directly every single day. You guys think about, my gosh, what's going to happen? It's not fair for a family like yours to know that your husband's putting in all these hours, and he may not come home at the end of the day after a bad fire, and know that, or if they come home sick, you're right, and know that, somehow benefits and time off and pay are being litigated, right? And so we need to fix this problem really fast. And again, Bob, I'll tell you, the only way this is going to fix is when calm, deliberative people sit down to talk.
So you're
with each other.
You're the lawyer on the council. Do you have Mayor Nierenberg's ear on this issue?
Yeah, I think the mayor has a very large ear. All of us have his ear. The one thing about Ron Nierenberg is that he can be mercurial, and even
Go into that a little bit.
well, I will, but he can be difficult to read. That guy's got the best poker face in the world, and the one thing that I will tell you about Ron that you can count on every single time is that he won't walk away from a conversation until he's understood what you've told him. Right? You may not agree with the guy at the end of the day. You may have a bitter disagreement with Ron. I really admire him because he doesn't know how to do spite, and he doesn't have anywhere to hold a grudge, right?
I agree with that.
That's a leadership trait that I've rarely seen in among politicians. Especially, mayors. We've had a long history of mayors that are really good at sharpening their knives and hiding in the tall weeds, ready to pounce and take their pound of flesh, right, for past slights. That's not Ron Nierenberg. So it is a pleasure to be able to sit next to him and talk to him. And it's a pleasure to disagree with him because the guy disagrees like a gentleman.
Well, assuming we don't get untracked by the fire union
Yeah.
versus the city staff and that can be addressed, what are the major issues that you really want to spend your time on? And I want to remind you of a conversation we had when you were a candidate, and I asked what people are coming up and poking you in the chest about, and it didn't take you a second to say traffic and
it
traffic.
didn't. I have a feeling if all of you later go shake Tony Valdivia's hand, he'll tell you the exact same thing I'm about to tell you. That when you walk through the neighborhoods on District 8, you knock on their doors and you tell them, hi, I'm running for city council, what's important to you? There is no person in District 8 who starts their list of things that are important with anything other than traffic, right? And then number 2 is traffic, and number 3 is traffic. And if you get them to stop talking to you about traffic, they'll talk about something else, and eventually they'll come back to traffic, right? It is the largest pain point in District 8. We are stuck in traffic. People actually say, wow, this may be worse than Austin, for District 8. There's no amount of money that you can throw at our traffic problem today that is going to result in traffic solutions for you tomorrow, right? And I really mean in the short term, there are no short-term solutions for District 8's traffic problem. You can lay as much concrete and pour as much, asphalt, or whatever, vice versa, asphalt and concrete as you want. You are not going to build your way out of District 8 or San Antonio's traffic problems anytime soon. So, Tony, am I wrong? I mean, that's everything everybody talked about was traffic, traffic, traffic. And then safety also. They brought up the issue of police. So I had this, we started looking at it, and what other cities have done is they figured out that while certainly concrete and asphalt is important, every time you lay asphalt or pour concrete, you're making a water drainage commitment, right? You're not just making a new surface for cars to go on, but you're now impacting your environment in different ways. You're displacing water. You're creating more heat islands, right? It costs a lot of money to maintain asphalt and concrete. And so you're making these long-term commitments. So these cities out there, and there's a long, long list of them, have said, we need to invest just as much in smart traffic management, right? And traffic dispersion models, and investing in swarm analytics, and what we call smart city and data-driven solutions. And there's lots of companies out there who are looking at San Antonio and knocking on our door saying, we have the solution for you. We have the solution for you. What you're going to end up seeing is that District 8, and I've got the commitment from my city council members and from the city manager now, that District 8 is going to become the proving ground for smart city, adaptive traffic management solutions. And we're going to start with the medical center. It's a perfect slice of San Antonio. Everybody visits the medical center at one point or another. And traffic is really bad in the medical center. I don't know if you all know this, but Fredericksburg has been declared by TxDOT and the federal government an autonomous vehicle testing ground. We're already speaking to, this past week, Pat and I have had conversations with 2 different autonomous vehicle companies that I'll share with you later. One of them rhymes with Oogle. And San Antonio is going to have to invest in that kind of technology, not to solve its traffic problem, Bob, but to manage it. And we're a grown-up city now, and traffic problems, you know, are the problems of every grown-up city. We just need
People
to...
would tell you that the medical center, and that's an incredible economic engine with more than 90,000 professional jobs, and UTSA for that matter, where we have 30,000 students. Those are two of the least pedestrian, bicycle-friendly, mass transit-friendly environments in our city.
Correct.
And you just mentioned streets and drainage. We just passed for the next 5 years this $850 million bond, which is terrific, but overwhelmingly the largest piece of that, I think about $250 million, is for streets and drainage.
Yes, sir.
That's money that we're not spending on mass transit solutions. And I would add to that Dallas and Houston over the last decade have each collected in excess of $100 million in federal transit funds that we're not eligible for because we don't have any mass transit projects on the drawing board or going into effect.
So there is no city that has ever managed, no city of our size, that has ever managed its traffic and its mobility issues without pulling from every single modality string, right? Which is bus, you know, rail, bus rapid transit, bike, walk. We are woefully behind on the in enhancing those different modalities. I'm happy to say that 3 weeks ago we broke ground on one of the first bond projects in San Antonio in the medical center that is going to be what we call a bicycle track complete green street. We're going to create big bike lanes in the medical center.
It's going to be a cycle track, which means a safe bike lane separated from vehicle traffic,
Yeah.
which we have very few of in our city.
The city of San Antonio should have probably planned for that when they built out the medical center a long time ago, right? I'm sad that I'm excited that we're finally doing it in 2018. We should not have waited this long, but we're finally doing it. Second, we've got a president in the White House who thinks that cutting grants and appropriations for streets and drainage is a good idea. That has never proven to be a sustainable solution for, you know, cities and traffic, and I'm genuinely worried. I'm a student of history like you are, Bob, and so if y'all remember, after World War II, cities decided we're going to build out our roads and we're going to build out our network and we're going to make our cities easier to drive around. And the federal government said, you know, that's a good idea, and we're going to help you do that because that sounds like a jobs program also. And so we had the Highway Act, and a lot of investment went into infrastructure. And in the 70s, after Vietnam, the cities came back and said, hey, by the way, the roads are crumbling, and there's a lot of folks who are out of work, and you know, it'd be great if we can do that all over again. And the federal government said, you know what, you're right. You know, we need to invest again in bridges and roads and highway systems. And now it's 2018, and we've gone back to the federal government and said, hey, you know, we do send up a lot of tax money to you guys, and our roads are crumbling, and our cities are big, and you know, we're sort of in the same tight spot that we were before. And the answer we're getting is, oh yeah, you know those Tiger grants that we used to give you guys? No. And you know, the Department of Transportation appropriations that we used to send down to the cities, how about no? Does no work for you? And now it's up to you guys. And so we've gone to the state and said, well, you know, we do send up a lot of money to Austin. You know, we'd really like for you guys to support us to help fix UTSA Boulevard, right? And Hausman Road and Fredericksburg Road. And what we keep hearing from the state is, yeah, no, we'd rather spend more time chasing people out of bathrooms than we would on your roads. So we've got a leadership crisis, right? And we've got to figure out how we're going to do this on our own. And how we're going to do it on our own is maybe we're just going to have to spend more money on VIA, right? And this adaptive traffic management systems that I'm talking about.
The cities that are thriving are the ones that have realized we're going to have to do it largely on our own, and that state legislatures and even the federal government are not going to be there for the kind of infrastructure investments that we need to thrive, particularly with 1 million more people coming. And my one criticism of the SA Tomorrow plan, all 900 pages of it, which Councilman Nirenberg chaired, but it was really Mayor Ivy Taylor's initiative, is it's a very interesting blueprint for understanding what's going to happen over the next 25 years, but it really doesn't contain concrete solutions or funding mechanisms for issues like transit. It just sort of predicts the sort of dilemma that we face. But in my mind, it doesn't get down to, okay, how are we going to roll our sleeves up as a community, and what are the hard decisions that we need to make to address those issues.
And that's the true test of leadership, right? Leadership is knowing where you've been, knowing what you need to do, and knowing how you're going to get there. I think that SA Tomorrow checks the box off on those first two. How we're going to pay for SA Tomorrow is something that keeps me up at night.
Now, I wonder whether or not our editor-in-chief, Beth Ferking, is here. Hi, Beth. Beth recently returned to South Texas. She's a Seguin native after 30 years in Washington, D.C., and we were doing an interesting event. Where were we? At the food bank, maybe? And Beth asked the council person we were talking to about their political ambitions and made me look terrible because I didn't ask that question. So I'm going to ask you, particularly in a city that's 60% Latino now, we certainly we've had our number of Latino leaders. The last was Mayor Julian Castro, and everybody knew even when he was elected mayor that he had national aspirations. Councilwoman Ivy Taylor became mayor in a sense by default by the council and eventually was knocked out. Mm-hmm. Mayor Nirenberg and all of your generation have 8 full years in office if you so choose to run 4 times. That's term limits have been relaxed. But do you have political aspirations beyond that? Do you see yourself as a potential Latino leader for the whole city down the road?
Absolutely not. Not in the first floor office of City Hall as a mayor. There's nothing attractive about that position. No, it pays a little more. I'll tell you, Ron Nirenberg's doing a terrific job. If Ron Nirenberg, God forbid, were to either get hit by a VIA bus or go look at something a little bit higher up in the federal or state government, I still wouldn't be interested. I'm having a very rewarding moment in my life doing this. I see a tremendous need for leadership that is focused on the leadership spot in which they are currently occupying. I think that the American people in particular are kind of sick and tired of seeing people occupy a leadership spot with their eye on the next one. It offends me a little bit when I see that, when it's just so evident that they're not even paying attention to their day-to-day and focusing more on how to position themselves for the next one. I don't know what you call that. I call it just doing the job you were hired to do. And so right now I'm doing that. I will tell you, my colleague, Greg Brockhouse, was on stage with you, and he said, listen,
that's where it was. It was Councilman Brockhouse.
Yeah, he said, don't kid yourself, something like that. Like, everybody at City Hall has mayoral aspirations. I didn't get that memo. I really am not.
He does.
Yeah, I mean, he does, and more power to him. And he's my friend, and I speak to him quite often. I think he's got some great ideas, but my focus is on this right now. And quite honestly, I wouldn't ever declare for another seat unless I got permission from my 2 most important constituents, which are my wife and my mother-in-law.
There we go. Yeah. I have one more question for you, but before I ask, I want to invite the audience to start asking questions instead of me doing it. And we have a microphone, or we have 2 microphones here, and since we're probably streaming this, we'll ask you to go over to the microphones and please just introduce yourself if you're a student here on campus or a District 8 voter or otherwise you're just attending. Let us know, and try to keep the speechifying to a minimum and give the councilman a question. But while you're moving over to the microphone, something that is up there in terms of thorny issues equal to mass transit, Manny, would be affordable housing. Yeah. And in District 8, I heard a anecdote from a nurse the other day and I was talking to her about, well, you're going to ride your bicycle to work now. And she told me, do you know most nurses, we park remotely. We can't afford to park in the medical center where we work, and we are shuttled in to work, which just astonished me that it's come to that. And when I asked her about, there's going to be a number of very attractive apartment multifamily developments that build up along some of these greenways that they're developing around the medical center, but she told me, my real fear is that I'm a professional nurse, I have an advanced degree, and I don't know that I'll be able to afford to live where I work, which would be disappointing, I think, for all of us that are trying to see these communities build where you can live, work, and play in one environment and not spend all your life commuting in a car.
In Aspen and in Brackenridge, Colorado, and other ski towns, the people who work in those ski towns can't afford to live in them. That's that's empirically wrong, in my opinion. I think that's terrible. I'll tell you, I'm data-based, and so when I look at this issue, I have to remind myself we're the third largest city in Texas, right? We're the seventh largest city in the United States, but we're also the third fastest growing municipal area in the United States. During the economic downturn, we actually thrived. We grew. We did better during this last Great Recession than anybody else did, in large part because Cheryl Scully, and City Council had some good, sound business principles helping guide us. But we've got a very serious problem. Within by 2040, the 1.5 million people are going to be here. We're going to need 500,000 new units of residential space to be able to accommodate those folks. Like I said, you lay 1 inch of concrete or pour a little bit of asphalt, and you're making a drainage commitment. Think about all the roof that you're going to have to build up, and think about all the drainage, the runoff, right? Just from an environmental perspective, what that means. So I'm very frustrated. I think the mayor's right in creating this council on housing and really looking at this issue. But it frustrates me.
Do you favor incentivizing developers to build affordable housing, or at least
Yes.
projects that contain a percentage of the units are affordably priced?
Yeah. So prior to being in city council, I used to represent developers and help them figure out ways to make their projects work. Sometimes the only way an affordable project works for low-income housing is if you can count on that incentive. Otherwise, the math doesn't pencil out. And if the math doesn't pencil out for low-income housing, then your only other option is to build market rate and let people who can afford fancy pants apartments or homes live there. It would be a leadership failure on our part if we didn't continue to incentivize that and make that space available. I'll tell you where we're woefully and dangerously behind is affordable senior living space. Bob and I are going to be in assisted living sometime soon. You sooner than me. And Bob and I are going to be, and in all seriousness, Bob and I are going to need, and we're going to be expecting our senior living facilities to have screaming fast Wi-Fi, right? We're going to expect them to be smart buildings, right? And
Bike lanes.
Right. Bike lanes. Maybe even a wine cave underneath, right, Bob? But one of the things that worries me is that whenever we do put multifamily living on the zoning commission's agenda, people lose their minds. And they come out and they say, absolutely no more multifamily, that's horrible, that's horrible. And when you say it's low-income multifamily, they come out in droves. And they come and complain about, well, you didn't give me enough notice, and I didn't get the right document mailed to me letting me know that this meeting was going to happen, and you had 5 meetings, but you should have had 7, and they complain more about form instead of telling you really what's on their mind, which is, I don't want poor people living next to me, right? And that happens up here on the north side, and it happens a lot, and it's really disappointing. And so I can tell you from firsthand experience being in the room and from hearing about it last week, meetings are like happening today in the Stone Oak area where low-income developers are saying, look, we're building out just for senior living. So grandma and grandpa can live close to you, right, on their Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security check. And people are saying, absolutely not. Why don't you send those people to the south side where they belong? And those people is low-income people. And so San Antonio really needs to come to grips.
And that just perpetuates our economic segregation.
And it does. And it does.
That's where leadership comes in.
So thankfully, you've got a city council up there who's not putting up with that. And, I like low-income housing, and I like low-income housing up here on the north side, so long as it's done in a way that's respectful to the neighborhoods next door, and so long as it's done with dignity and respect for the people who are going to live there too. Last thing we want to put is cardboard houses up, and so.
But I think the cities we most like to visit are the ones that are the most racially integrated, ethnically integrated, economically integrated. When you walk the streets of New York, you have no idea if you're next to a millionaire or somebody that's out of work, but there's a dynamic and a verve there that we lack in our city. And if we break down some of that segregation, I think we'll find many other benefits.
So I'm quick to remind folks that low-income housing are veterans, teachers, nurses, priests,
Graduates.
nuns, students, right? And so we need to change the conversation and really start educating people about what it is they're really talking about. And so,
All right. We have two great lines, so we'll start over here. Who's first? Absolutely. Scouts honor.
Hello, my name is Joshua.
Speak up a little bit, Joshua.
Hello, my name is Joshua. What made you want to be a government leader?
What made me want to be a government leader? Thank you, Joshua. Gratitude. That's what made it. My family, I'm first generation. My family is from South America.
Your parents are immigrants from Colombia?
From Colombia. And remember, in the early 70s and 80s, Colombia was not the place you wanted to be. And so they came to this country seeking greener pastures and something a little bit more decent for their kids. And this city in particular has given me a lot. And it's given my children a lot. And it's given my mom the opportunity to do what she loves, which is help other folks. It's given my dad the opportunity to be a doctor, and to be a doctor with a very thick accent and be accepted despite the fact that he's other, right? It's given my brother an opportunity to be an artist and thrive as an artist, and my sister an opportunity to be a lawyer. So I saw an opportunity to help out, right? And people help out in different ways. Some of them join the police force or the firefighters. Others become teachers. Others, serve on boards and commissions. This was an opportunity, and I figured my kids need to. I talk a lot about leadership at home, and my kids need to see what leadership looks like. And I'm hoping that every single day I show them what it looks like.
So that's a good question, Joshua, and it's all about giving back. And I think we have another Scout question, do we?
Hello, my name is Aaron, and how can citizens help you to be more effective?
Oh, thank you. That's a great question.
Can you repeat that question for everybody?
How can citizens help me to be more effective? Thank you, Aaron. By being engaged. Tony Valdivia is very passionate about engagement, and I am too. And I can tell you that Ron Nierenberg is also passionate about it. We have a serious problem in San Antonio. Sometimes the most important issues are left to you, the voters. Bond initiatives, right? Who's going to be your leader for City Hall, or your next county judge, or your next justice of the peace. Sometimes. And we have town hall meetings and nobody shows up. And sometimes we'll offer to the public, hey, look, we're going to even have a virtual town hall meeting. Make it easier for you, no excuse. And nobody shows up. And sometimes we'll say, okay, fine, well then just send us emails and call our offices, and then nobody calls. And then, in the absence of that kind of engagement, we then make decisions guided by our own, information gathering, and then people get mad at us for not engaging them. And so there is a certain responsibility, Aaron, of you showing up, right? The first rule of leadership is you got to show up, right? And it's not just your leaders who show up, but you need to show up also and ask us questions like you did today. And so thank you for being here, guys.
Yeah, let's hear it for the Scouts. Because the Scouts are all about community engagement, and eventually you guys are going to be old enough to vote, and only 15% of the people that were eligible to vote in our city turned out for the elections in which the councilman was elected, so we have a long ways to go.
Yeah. So
we'll go to this side.
Hi, my name is James, and I'm a senior public administration here at UTSA. So my question has to do with the narrative of public leaders, and especially elected public officials, that you hear nothing ever gets done. So as maybe an aspiring elected official myself, maybe being in elected office one day, how do you control the narrative of, picking out the negatives, but also sticking to the positives?
So I have a director of communications, and Erin, I hired her. She came from the TV world, and some of you may recognize her or not. She used to be in front of the camera as opposed to behind it. And we spend hours every day together, and none of that time is ever spent managing the narrative. We spend it just doing our job, right? And trying to make the right decision every time, and then hoping that people notice that we thought long and hard about a decision prior to making it, that we gathered a lot of consensus and information. How do you tune out the negative and to really just focus on the positive? We don't. The negative hurts sometimes. People say some really ugly things on Facebook, and people say some ugly things to you, right? And after a while, you just gotta go home and look at your kids in the eye and tell them, today I did the best I could, and I tried hard. And when no one's looking, lick your wounds and then show up to work the next day. But I tell you, the same applies to any job I've ever had in my entire life. And that is just do the best you can and hope that at the end of the day, you leave the world a little better just because you showed up that day.
But you need thick skin in public life. It's just a fact of the matter.
You do, but I'll tell you, the folks who I always thought had the thickest skin, like football thick, Cheryl Scully, for example, right? Everybody has finds it very easy to criticize that lady, but I'll remind you, that's a person. Cheryl Scully goes home and she's got a family and she reads the things that people write about her in the newspaper, and I don't envy her on some days. And she's got very, very thick skin, but nobody's skin is impermeable.
Everybody's human.
Yeah, everybody's
Good
human.
question. Let's go back over here.
Hello, Mr. Rivard. My name is Judy Brady, and I want to thank you for publishing every letter to the editor I ever sent in. You gave me a voice to advocate. Councilman, I want to congratulate you on being the first to respond to my challenge to investigate what is going on in Saha. It's San Antonio's dirty little secret. And finally, having lived in this traffic area, I would strongly suggest that you go over the CPS records for the number of accidents between Huebner and I-10 and De Zavala and I-10, and you will see that the traffic lights are never timed correctly.
Yeah.
So this light is yellow and this light is green, and they collide. You can have CPS will mess with the lights, and then the accident will follow. When you go all the way down Huebner from Bandera to 1604, those lights are not timed. So y'all are building streets, but not timing the lights.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I don't think CPS handles the traffic
No,
signals.
but I hear you loud and clear.
yeah.
And so what you're talking about is light sequencing and light timing. A lot of people, they kind of look at you weird when you tell them, hey, most of our lights are set on egg timers. That's not the way to run a modern world-class city. And so I can tell you that the city is making some serious advancements and investments in not just sequencing lights, but having lights that react real time to traffic conditions to get you home faster, right? And by the way, who else is stuck in traffic? Police officers and ambulances and fire trucks. And so this isn't just a quality of life issue, right? Yeah, but thanks for bringing that up.
No, that's a classic pothole question from a constituent, which is a lot of what your life as a council person's about.
That's all we do is potholes and traffic accidents and traffic lights.
Let's go back over here.
Hi, my name's Marie.
Close to the mic, please.
Sure. My name's Marie, and I have a couple questions, but
Sure.
I think I can only ask one. So, a lot of people love to talk about the Pearl, and they love to say how economically prosperous it is. But if you notice, it's where people work and play and live all in one small little area. They walk, they go home, they eat, they have events there. It's all together. It's walkable. It's walkability. So we in District 8 are very suburbia, right? So how can we increase our walkability? That's my first question. Second question is, when y'all get together and you start thinking about our traffic problems, right? Every city has this, but have you looked at other cities? Like I've got right here, doesn't have to be the solution, but they have something called an H-Bahn in Germany, right? It's an interchangeable car, literally elevated above land, and you just keep switching out wherever you need to go, and it's elevated. How are you guys coming up with the next solution? Do you question all this? Do you look around?
Marie, thank you so much for that question. Is that just two of them, or do you have?
I have to keep it to two.
All right, thanks. So walkability, the first thing you need to do is there needs to be a critical mass of people out there who say we want to walk, right? I hear you loud and clear, right? And there's a lot of folks like Bob who talk about walkability and all that. But unless you show up to town halls, right, and email us and show up to City Hall and let us know, and we see critical mass out there, right? That and you're a walking, talking critical mass of Marie, right? But squeaky wheels do get the oil at City Hall, okay? And so what I would encourage everybody in here is if you want a walkable, bikeable city, right, don't wait until it happens, but say it often and say it loud, right? So that we have no choice but to pay attention and say, okay, fine, we'll do it, right? That said, I'm not waiting because I also feel like this is not a walkable, bikeable city. With regards to benchmarking, and that's what you're talking about, right? Looking at other cities. I just got back from Darmstadt, who's our new sister city. There is nobody on Darmstadt who rides around in vehicles. It's a World War II city and everybody's on a bicycle. And the mayor of Darmstadt will tell you, well, yeah, of course, like how would we have it any other way? And we tell him, look, nobody rides their bike to work in San Antonio. And he goes, well, you know, you'd be crazy to take a car over here. He goes, look how nice it is. And it was a horrible day in Darmstadt. It was cold and windy, but we looked at that, right? And so right now we're looking at investing in what Darmstadt is invested in, which is dockless bicycle sharing. So that's coming your way, and we're debating that at City Hall. The other thing, too, is 1.5 million people is the number of San Antonians we have. 1.5 million people is also the number of passengers that Transmilenio, which is the bus rapid transit system, moves every single morning in Bogota and every single afternoon. So from home to work, work to home, right? They move the entire population of San Antonio on one bus system. And that's just a drop in the bucket. They've got 8 million people in that city. So we're already working on planning on taking our transportation community, right, to go look at this thing. Curitiba, Brazil is also another place that is very forward thinking with regards to bus rapid transit and moving large amounts of people in a convenient, comfortable way. And then what you're talking about, the elevated H-bond and all that stuff, before you walked in here today, I was talking to Taylor Amy, the president of UTSA, telling him about how, you know, I'm looking at, just because somebody sent it to me, you know, major cities are investing in gondola systems now to move people from one side to the other. Sao Paulo has a very sophisticated, so does Medellin, a very sophisticated gondola system. I'm not telling you gondolas are right for San Antonio, but what is right for San Antonio is a willingness to admit that we don't know everything and that other cities may have already figured out some solutions that we ought to be investigating.
I think it's convenience.
Sure.
Think about convenience. You got to think about, how am I going to get to the medical center if it's so crowded like that? How am I going to get in a place that's going to take me directly to where I need to go, as close as where I need to be? I'm going to get a surgery. I've got a family member with me and I don't want to get lost and I'm nervous. How am I going to get there? And then be able to safely park a car somewhere if I'm going to be driving back from a surgery. Something like that. You know, it has to be enclosed, no environment getting to you. A lot of people are going to the medical center because they have to be on time, their workers there, or they're getting surgery or medical procedure. They can't. Biking is great, but I'm just thinking out loud, I'm sorry. We just got to think about the patient, somebody who's ill.
We're with you. And so anything that we do put together has to be customer focused, right? At the end of the day, I can build you the most beautiful bus system and build, you know, gondolas, let's just say, right? But if they're empty after spending $100 million on them, then we will have, you know, failed colossally. And so at the same time, it's got to be something that people want, right? Which again brings me back to the whole citizen engagement component, which is unless you're telling us what you want, right, in every way you possibly can, you're going to leave it up to 11 people at City Hall to sort of divine this from nothing. So thank you for coming out and speaking to me.
Yeah, and we won't speak for President Amy while he's here, but he does have fresh eyes as the newcomer. And I've heard him talk about his initial impressions that both this campus and the downtown campus are not people-friendly environments in their surrounding streetscapes, and so that needs to be addressed. And it looks like you lost your mic. Let's go to a question over here on this side.
Very good, very good. My name is John Thornton. I'm the head of the Tanglewoods Residents Association. One of the questions I wanted to ask you about was when Mayor Nuremberg was our council person, one of his major items of interest was securing the water future for San Antonio. as we add another 1.5 million people over the next 20 plus years, effectively adding Philadelphia to our borders. What is being done to continue his work in securing our water future here in San Antonio?
Thank you for that question, John. San Antonio is a thirsty city. There's everything we do has some component of water to it. San Antonio also happens to have the misfortune of living on top of an ocean of water that is very dangerous to tap into, very sensitive environment that, quite honestly, we could drill into it and just suck all the water out and have water for the next 2 generations. It's incredibly irresponsible to do that, right? And it would hurt us in the long term. So we got to get our water from somewhere. The Vista Ridge Pipeline was buying water for the next 30, 40 years at today's prices as opposed to tomorrow's prices. It doesn't take an expert in water or commodities to know that water today is going to be cheaper than water tomorrow. How do we know that? Because that's the way it's been for the past 40 years. Water 40 years ago was way cheaper than it is today. It is getting more expensive to source water. The gallon of water is not getting cheaper, and it's not going to get cheaper anytime soon. There also, and one of those reasons is because weather events used to be predictable. We used to know how much water we can account for in 2019. We used to be able to say, according to the Farmer's Almanac, we're going to get this many inches of rain. You can't say that anymore. There's no new normal. The normal is unpredictability, and that unpredictability makes commodities cost more. Because of that, that Vista Ridge Pipeline, I think, is going to prove out to be, while expensive, and a very, very high price tag, is going to prove out to be one of the most important things that we will do for the next few generations of San Antonians. At the same time, desalination is a technology that we need to continue to invest in. San Antonio does have a desalination plant. The problem with desalination is that it's expensive, and but it's less expensive than it was. And so I do think that as we invest more in R&D, you're going to see that desalination is the source from which we're going to be able to hydrate San Antonio. Thanks for the question, John.
Okay, yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Zoe Marincheva, and I live right here, Houseman. I'm a voter, and I appreciate all of your hard work. I see the results of your work on Houseman.
Thank you.
Looking forward to that new project that you're going to be doing there. But my question concerns education. As you know, we have a cluster of Title I schools, middle-class area Title I schools. Title I schools do not serve the needs of academically gifted kids. And EISD has magnet schools for middle schoolers, right? We don't. And that creates certain tension within our neighborhood. We are not really a community. People move in and out all the time. I've lived there for 8 to 9 years. I don't know some of my neighbors anymore. People have to move in order for their kids to get better education. What can we do about that? We need magnet schools.
Yeah, so I'll tell you, all of this is tied to school funding, right? And the school funding is a function of the state, right? Time and time again, the courts have told Texas, you guys aren't even meeting your responsibility under the Texas Constitution by funding these schools adequately. And time again, the state of Texas, the governor's office, continues to prove that he just doesn't really care and continues to underfund your schools, right? So schools have very small budgets with which to work so that they can meet very high expectations like the one you just articulated. This is not going to get better until we've got a serious sea change in leadership in Austin, right? Now, from the San Antonio point of view, what we can do is we can continue to spend effort and resources on things like pre-K for SA, right? When we prepare our children with pre-K, we've discovered, and this is just a scientific fact, they will perform better, right, at school down the road. They will learn to read sooner, right? And they will learn how to share and play with each other a little sooner, right? That has been a very successful project and a very successful program, to the point where it's now being kicked around as pre-K for USA, and we just came back from DC last week, where they're looking at expanding something similar in nationwide. I hope something like that does happen eventually, but here's my commitment to you, right? And this is what I've been telling a lot of folks who bring that to me. and that is we need to figure out a way to send the message loud and clear that our future workforce and our future competitiveness, right, and our ability to continue to attract, jobs is tied to excellent schools, right, and that we are precipitously close to no longer being able to say that we've got prepared workforce. UTSA can't do everything for us, right?
Yeah,
There's no good answer to your question, by the way.
Right. But why NEISD has magnet schools, middle school magnet schools, and why NISD doesn't? That's my question. We have good high schools that are magnets, right?
Yeah.
Not middle school. Middle school is very important, 6th to 8th grade, hugely important.
Yeah, so it's important for you to also remember, a lot of folks bring me questions, like, hey, why is the San Antonio River Authority not doing this for me, or the Housing Authority, or Bexar County, you need to talk to Bexar County. NEISD, NISD, these are independent government bodies that are autonomous, that don't answer to city councilmen, don't answer to state reps, don't answer to county commissioners, and so they are run by their own little council called the Board of Trustees, right? And they have the discretion to create these schools or not, right? And so if it's something that's really important to you, I will walk you to their offices.
But even fewer people vote in those school board elections than vote in city elections.
That's right.
And so participation's key.
That's right.
You've got to go to the school board meetings. We're going to lose our audience pretty soon, and we have to get people out here, but we'll take real quickly the next 3 questions. Go ahead, ma'am.
Hi, Councilman. My name is Tracy Talavera. I work for the San Antonio Council on Alcohol and Drug Awareness.
Yeah.
We were formerly drug abuse, but we just recently changed our name to awareness. There's a lot of issues that intersect with drug and alcohol abuse, such as homelessness, veterans who come back from Afghanistan, also foster care, drinking and driving. As we know in San Antonio, we have some of the highest drinking and driving rates. And I was wondering, how often are drugs and alcohol part of y'all's topics of conversations in City Council when you're talking about issues that affect the community?
More now than ever before, and particularly with an emphasis on the opioid addiction epidemic. Way too many San Antonians, thousands of San Antonians, have been overprescribed and wrongfully prescribed opioid medicines, to the point where we've got not just veterans addicted, but soccer moms are, addicted. We've got physicians addicted. Police officers and firefighters are also addicted. Everybody in this room knows somebody who's addicted to opioids, okay? It has become so prevalent that it now requires us to make sure that every single fire truck and all of our EMS units have, the anti-opioid, whatever, however it is you pronounce it. I'm sorry, I don't know the name.
It's easier.
But to where we need to have those drugs on board, and we need to have people trained on how to respond to opioid overdoses. This problem's going to get worse before it gets better. And thankfully, there's some folks that have woken up to the idea that maybe if you hit these manufacturers and distributors in the pocketbook by way of opioid litigation, the way that you did with tobacco and, Firestone tires and all that, you just might get their attention. And I think what you've seen now is a reaction to that in the industry. Walgreens or CVS now will not dispense opioids in anything more than doses of 7. That's important because they used to give it to you like 90 pills. Here you go, knock yourself out, literally. And now they're policing themselves a little better. And so, but it's not because they suddenly got a conscience. It's because folks like you and folks like me and, the hospital districts and, the insurance companies are saying, we've got a major problem on our hands. And so thanks for the work you do.
Yes, sir. Last question.
My name is Jed Kachuk. I'm a digital banking executive and a resident. I have a question about a regulation gap that I accidentally stumbled upon here in San Antonio and in your district. I'm from Europe originally, so it seems that there is no regulation that governs the distance between schools, where schools are built, and high voltage installations such as long distance power lines or substations, which emit a lot of electromagnetic fields and some secondary radiation, which affect the health of human beings, especially growing organisms such as kids. So I have contacted CPS about it, and they don't do anything because there is no law or regulation that requires them to do anything. I have talked to several schools, and again, they never tested anything because there is no law or regulation requiring them to do something. being a European where this stuff is regulated, because there's a growing body of evidence that it is a correlation between health issues, significant health issues, and exposure to EMF of this type, what can we do about this? Because there are schools all over this district that are literally like right next to one of those substations or huge electrical towers.
Never. In the 6 months that we've been in serving District 8 in my capacity as a city council person and my staff, has anybody ever brought this issue to us? So this is congratulations. You've literally been the #1 person who's asked this question. And so the answer I'm going to give you is a very honest, I have no idea. And I'm going to have to look into that, man. I really don't know. And, but now that you mention it, there are some of those high voltage lines that buzz when you walk past them, right? And that is kind of scary. I promise you I'll look into it. I wish I could give you a more satisfying answer, but I really don't know.
Okay, our last question, and sir, over to you.
Yes, Ed Castor. My question's concerning how we fund our city budget. I understand that, we use CPS, SALs, and property taxes. And we've been fortunate that we've always relied on the appraisals going up. And now my question is, what can the mayor and elected city council do to generate more income? Is it fiscally prudent to be relying on property evaluations just going up?
Yeah. So if we were just relying on property valuations, I would tell you that that's a really bad business plan, right? Because you never know when you're going to be fluctuating in a, downward. Sadly, there's no indication that your valuations this year are going to go in this direction. They're going to go up. And I'm willing to bet Bob's salary that they're going to go up. I have been worrying about this a lot. The city of San Antonio has a tax rate that has not been increased for more than 10 years,
20 years, I think.
And it's stayed flat. Bear County has stayed flat also, and yet your tax bills go up and up and up and up. And we always tell you, hey, it's not our fault. They've stayed flat, right? It's a cute answer that you get from the municipal and the county government. That doesn't really solve your problem, right? I will point out, though, that CPS pays for 1/3, if not more, of the city's budget. That's not unimportant. That is a really big amount of money that paying your light bill actually goes towards paying for police and fire and streets and drainage and all that. Other cities don't have that. Other cities have private utilities, and what happens at a private utility is that you pay your bill, they make their profit, and then they take it home, and they don't have to reinvest it in anything. And so we are lucky to have a CPS, and I'll caution everybody to not take that for granted. That's one of the most important benefits of living in San Antonio, is you actually have municipally owned utilities that pay back into the city. As far as valuations go, the only thing that I have the power to do today, right, unless the state reforms Bear County Appraisal District and the way it calculates appraisals and ad valorem taxes, the only power I have is to educate people on how to protest, right, their tax valuation. Do you know that the majority of San Antonians don't? And if you do, there's a really likely chance that you'll get some traction there, and they'll say, okay, you're right, and they might actually offer you a reduction. By not protesting, you leave money on the table, right? If every San Antonian went and protested, I wonder how many millions of dollars in tax would not be paid. And I think it's my job, at the very least, to tell you where to go get those forms to protest, what to write on those forms, what not to say when you have your interview with the appraisal district. And so we're going to do that. And we're doing that at our next town hall. Go to our website. We're going to be advertising where we're going to do it. We're going to do it at the Hardburger Park. And we're going to be bringing in some tax professionals to teach you how to defend yourself and to actually do your own self-help tax reform until the state government decides to do its job and fix taxes for all of us.
All right, on that note, we're going to call it a night. I really want to thank everybody for coming out. Really appreciate you as an audience. And Councilman Police, thank you. And I hope we can come back at the end of your first term and do this again.
Yeah, me too. And I'm sad that the Boy Scouts left, but what Bob does, with these is all he's doing is adding to community. And by you showing up, you're creating and advancing community. And I want to give you a little community, a little taste of community. And these are Samoas. These are gifts from God. These are the most delicious Girl Scout cookies.
Is there a Girl Scout in the family?
Yeah. And so, guys, it's Girl Scout season. Please, if you know a Girl Scout, go buy the cookies. They really do beautiful work with the money that they collect from those cookies.
Well, the only thing you were wrong about tonight, Councilman, was how soon we're going to be in the senior care communities. Everything else was pretty accurate. And I do have a number of millennial colleagues, and I'm going to turn this over to them
Great.
for them to handle tomorrow in the office. Thank you again.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank all of you.